Welcome back to another What's for Dinner video where I share 3 meals that I made this week that are super easy and quick to put together, so they are perfect for weeknight meals. This was a tough week because there was pretty much something that went wrong with every single meal, but I wanted to show this anyways because sometimes it just happens. For the first meal, I wanted to make some barbecue chicken tenders in the air fryer, and this was my first time making them, so I was kind of just winging it here. I used some panko breadcrumbs and I seasoned it with some salt, some black pepper, paprika, and some dried parsley, and then I mixed it all together. I also whisked 2 eggs really well, and I sliced some chicken breast into these tenders. I grabbed each tender and coated it in the egg and then dipped it into the breadcrumbs to coat in breadcrumbs and then placed it in my air fryer. I preheated my air fryer to 390 degrees for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to cook these for about 7 minutes on each side. And I forgot to show it here, but at some point I also remembered that I didn't add any oil, so I just took it out and sprayed some avocado oil on top and then let that cook for us about 7 minutes, flipped it over, added more oil, and then cooked it for another 7 minutes. I served that with some macaroni and cheese on the side. So here I'm making my favorite macaroni and cheese recipe. This is my go-to recipe and what I make all the time, and I'll leave it linked in the description box below. So I melted about 2 tablespoons of butter, added 2 tablespoons of flour, and I'm mixing that together to make this roux. I think that's how you pronounce it. So I'm just going to continue to stir until the butter and cooks the flour. And then after a few minutes, or a couple of minutes, I'm going to pour in 2 cups of milk. So here I'm pouring in 2 cups of, I think this was 2% milk. Ideally, I would have used whole milk, but I just had 2%. So I'm pouring in the milk very, very slowly, whisking as I'm pouring it in. And then I'm just going to continue to whisk this for about 10 minutes or so until the sauce starts to thicken up. And I also seasoned it with some black pepper and some salt to taste. So here you can see that my sauce has kind of thickened up. It's coating the sides of my pan. So I just went ahead and turned the stove off and then added about 1 cup of cheese, of shredded cheese, into this pot. Continue to mix it until the cheese melted. I like to do this to give the sauce a little bit of that like yellow color. And I'm just using sharp cheddar cheese, but I think you can pretty much use any cheese that you like. In the meantime, I also prepared this baking dish because I am going to bake this in the oven. So I sprayed this dish with some avocado oil, added my cooked macaroni, and then poured the cheese sauce over the cheese. I also added the shredded cheese on top of the pasta because this cheese sauce will kind of like melt the cheese, and it just makes it really super cheesy and delicious. I added some foil to help the hot cheese sauce melt the cheese, and then I started to work on my breadcrumbs. So I added a little bit of oil to this pan here and then added my breadcrumbs, and I'm just going to toss them around until they turn nice and golden brown. And once they're golden brown like they are here, I uncovered my macaroni and cheese and mixed everything together to make sure that that cheese that I had added kind of melts in there. And then I topped the cheese with some of those breadcrumbs, or all of the breadcrumbs, and some more cheese so that this can melt in the oven and just makes it super crunchy and delicious. And once I added the breadcrumbs, I'm just going to put this in the oven. I think it was at 325 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes until the cheese on top has melted. My initial plan was to toss the chicken tenders in some barbecue sauce, but my husband said he wanted his barbecue sauce on the side, so I decided to just top it with some dried parsley and then just drizzle some barbecue sauce over the top. And here's what the macaroni and cheese looked like once it was out of the oven. This was so delicious. I absolutely love this macaroni and cheese and highly recommend you try this recipe. So where things went wrong here was that I wanted to serve this with a side of roasted broccoli, but my broccoli went bad, so I ended up having to throw that away and serve this without a vegetable, which was okay, but I would have much preferred to have a vegetable side. This next meal is going to look very similar to the first, but I was actually making some Parmesan chicken today. So I added some panko breadcrumbs, sprinkled in about a half cup of Parmesan cheese. This was cheese that I shredded. And then I also added some salt, pepper, and some fresh parsley. I set that to the side, and then I whisked 1 egg, and then at some point I realized that this was probably not going to be enough eggs to coat all of the chicken that I had, so I went ahead and added another egg. I used about 3 chicken breasts that I sliced to make them thinner and the same size, and I just seasoned them with some salt, pepper, and some garlic powder, and then mix that together really well. I'm going to take each piece of chicken and dunk it into the egg and then put it into the breadcrumbs to coat in breadcrumbs, and then I'm going to set it aside on this baking dish with parchment paper over the top. And I'm going to repeat this to all of my pieces of chicken until I have coated every piece. I sprayed it over the top with some avocado oil and then put it in the oven at 425 degrees for about 10 minutes. I took it out after 10 minutes, gave it a flip, and then sprayed it with some avocado oil on this side and then put it back in the oven for another 10 minutes. I used to make this chicken all the time, and when I first started cooking, this was actually the only thing that I knew how to make, but for some reason this time it just did not brown like it used to. I don't know what I did differently, but I'm gonna have to go back and look at my original recipe because I did something wrong here. But either way, once the chicken was fully cooked, I just took it out of the oven. I added some pasta sauce over the top and then I sprinkled it with some cheese and then put it back in the oven until the cheese melted. I just used like the regular store-bought pasta sauce. I think this was Prego. But I would love to be the type of person who makes their own pasta sauce, so maybe someday I will give that a try. In the meantime, I also made a really quick pasta, so I boiled some linguine and then added a little bit of that red sauce over the linguine, and that's what I'm serving here. And then I added some more pasta sauce over that because it just didn't feel like enough. And then here goes my chicken, topped that with some fresh parsley, and then served it with some roasted zucchini on the side. And this meal was okay, but I feel like I could have done something different to make it better, but maybe next time. So for this next meal, I made a kale salad with some steak and roasted sweet potatoes. I absolutely love sweet potatoes, and I had been waiting for the weather to get a little bit colder so that I can start making these again because they just taste great during the fall. So I diced some sweet potatoes and then I seasoned them with some salt, pepper, drizzled them with some olive oil, and then I spread them so that they were kind of all touching the pan and not overlapping. And I put these in the oven at 425 degrees for a total of about 45 minutes. Every 15 minutes I would come in and kind of give them a shake until they were tender. So for my kale salad, I tore the leaves off the stem and also kind of tore them into smaller bite-sized pieces. You don't want the stem in there because that's really tough, so it's better to take it out. So I went ahead and did that to all of my kale, then rinsed and dried the leaves. And then I massaged my kale with a little bit of olive oil. And I did not used to do this to my kale, and I could not understand why people like kale so much because to me it just tasted super tough. And now that I know that you're supposed to massage it, it was a complete game changer. So if you were like me and not massaging your kale, try it this way. It completely changes it, and I think this is how you're supposed to technically do it. So I'm glad that I figured that out. So I just went in with my hands and massaged it for a good 5 minutes or so until all of the leaves were very tender, and they even changed color. They turned like a brighter green color. And this is what it looked like once it was done. I went ahead and set it aside and then started working on the rest of my ingredients. Here I'm dicing one apple. I absolutely love to add apples to my kale salad, so I just diced this apple into like similar size pieces. Added most of it in there. I saved some to top the salad later just to make it look nicer. And then I also added some of those slivered almonds. And I'm going to make a really quick dressing. So I'm adding a little bit of lemon juice, a bit of extra virgin olive oil, some salt, a little bit of pepper, and then I also added some honey for sweetness and some Dijon mustard to add a little bit of creaminess. And I whisked that together and then poured most of it over the kale salad. I didn't use all of it because I felt like I didn't need it, but I added most of it there. And then I also topped it with some Parmesan cheese, mixed it together very, very well, and then topped it with the rest of the apples, some more almonds, and a little bit more cheese. I also added a squeeze of lemon over the apples to keep the apples from browning, and then added some salt and pepper as well. And then right before I served it, I just made sure to toss everything together. This salad is so good. I really, really like it. I've been making it for a couple of years now, and it always comes around during the fall. And it really is one of my favorites. And it actually keeps pretty well in the fridge, so we also enjoy eating this the next day. I covered this with a kitchen towel and stuck it in the fridge while I worked on the steak here. I had some flank steak that I wanted to use up, and I read that if you marinate it, it turns out really good. So I looked up a quick flank steak marinade and tried it out. I'll link the one that I used. To be honest, it wasn't my favorite, and I really wish I would have used a different one because I don't know if maybe I just did something wrong or if the taste, like the flavors of the marinade just weren't for me. The chicken was, not the chicken, the steak was okay, but I would definitely try a different one next time. The star of the show here really was the salad and the sweet potatoes. I really forgot how much I love sweet potatoes. They are so good. So here I'm adding the salad, the sweet potatoes, and then the steak that I sliced and added over the top. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.